So, as you may or may not know, the 335 is down right now. We are currently waiting on a new front differential to arrive. At this current moment, I can't really do anything to the car since we're just waiting on that. I've also got a new axle on the way, and hopefully with the new diff, we won't be breaking any more of these. But the new axle, along with a few other things such as differential seals and differential fluid, will be here right around the same time as the diff, and then we can finally put it all back together. So both of my cars are currently out of commission. And you might be wondering, what do you mean, Reese, by both cars? I thought you just had the 335. But that's not true. I do have another BMW, and I've had it for quite some time. You know me by the 335, the point of view drives, the turbo noises, and to be honest, a lot of that gets repetitive. I've been doing it for almost 2 years now. And you know, if you've seen one or two of my videos, you've probably seen them all because they're all very similar. And I admit it's very repetitive. But honestly, it doesn't really get that tiring, especially being the person that drives the car. However, from a viewer standpoint, it probably does get quite boring. And I think that means it's time to bring in my other car finally. And as I mentioned, you probably don't even know that I have another car. And my other car honestly gets more attention than this one does, even though this one makes all the crazy noises and it's just obnoxious. And as you can see, there's not another car in this garage, so we do actually have to travel to go see this car. So let's hop in the truck real quick and start making our journey to see my other car. So now that I'm on my way, I have a little bit of a drive ahead of me. We're gonna talk about the car and give a little bit of an origin story. And the other car that I own is a 1989 BMW 325i, also more commonly known as an E30. And I've owned it for about 10 years now, which for me is crazy to think about because it really doesn't feel like 10 years. And even though it's been sitting for a good bit now, it's one of those cars that I could never see myself selling. I always held true to that. Some of my friends even suggested selling the E30, and that's just something I would never do. I told myself I'm going to keep this car until the day I die. And so far I've held true to that. And the real reason that it's been sitting for so long is because, unfortunately, on my way to work one morning, a deer jumped out in front of me and smashed the whole front end of the car. It left a decent amount of damage. Most of it was cosmetic, thankfully. There are a few other things that we'll need in order to get it driving again, and I'll definitely go over all of that once we get there in person to check it out. I'm sure a lot of you are aware that bodywork isn't necessarily cheap, and since this car is in really good condition, I don't want to cheap out on bodywork because I know bad bodywork is pretty noticeable, but financially it just didn't really make sense for me to dump all the money into that car. So it's been sitting on the sidelines for a little while, and I think it's finally time to start taking a look at it and get this thing at least running and driving again so we can get some of the momentum that we probably need in order to get it fully back on the road and looking good again. Now, there are quite a few modifications to the E30. It was mostly a stance car back in its prime, so obviously it's on coilovers, but outside of the suspension, we have done some cylinder head work. At one point, the rocker arm ended up kind of crumbling, and I had to rebuild the cylinder head. So when I did that, I made sure to throw some heavy duty rocker arms in there, as well as a Schrick 272 camshaft. So it does have a little bit of a lope on idle, and it sounds pretty sick. With that being said, it also does have an exhaust on it. We can go over a little bit more of all of it once I'm there in person, but for now, I think I'm just gonna focus on driving, so I'll see you once I get there. All right, so here we are. This is my E30. It has definitely seen better days. As you can see, it is looking like a barn find. Looks like we have some cat paw prints. And I believe this box here is the new lower valence for the front end here. As you can see, there's a little bit of, it's kind of like warped here, and it got smashed in over on this side here as well. Luckily, I was able to get a new one from BMW before they became no longer available. As you can see, the hood is pretty creased here. I don't really think there's any saving that, as well as here, there is a nice little crease. We can see that the grille is kind of just hanging there. The headlight has been quite damaged as well, and this high beam here must have just disappeared because it's not there anymore. Aside from that, the fender is kind of a little bit warped. You can't really tell in the video here, but it is a little bit warped, and I believe it got shifted back a little bit, so when you try to open the door here, it gets pinched right up in here. And obviously, you can see on the door here, that it got smashed in as well. I'm assuming this can actually be pulled and fixed, but that's kind of why I want to get someone that knows bodywork so I can actually figure out what parts I need to get and then go from there. Also, something else you can't really see on the rocker panel here, there is a little bit of a dent in there. Then coming to the other side of the car, we have a warped fender as well. This thing is definitely warped and needs to be replaced. Back when I was a stance guy, I rolled these fenders and they're not looking super hot anyways. But unfortunately, this rocker panel is in much worse condition. It is completely smashed in and needs to be addressed. And then the only other body work that really needs done to this thing is some of the rust right here that is starting to form. This car doesn't really have any rust on it, but this is one of the most common spots for rust to build up on E30s, right under the battery tray in the back. So that will need addressed as well. But outside of that, I think that's all the body work that needs to be done. And it's kind of a lot, but at the same time, it will be worth it once it's done. The paint on the car has been very much deteriorated, but once you try bringing it back to life by like doing a paint correction, it just goes back to the old same faded look. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that E30s had a single stage paint process and it wasn't the greatest paint. So I think a paint job would definitely suit this car. And I do think I want to go with the original Zinobero paint color because this color is just beautiful and E30s look great in red in my opinion. I don't see any reason to change the paint on this car. But aside from that, we have the engine bay here and it's definitely not perfect. The valve cover definitely needs a little bit of love to make sure it looks proper again. In here is pretty much all stock. There's nothing too crazy inside there. It could definitely use a nice cleaning. I can't remember if I mentioned it earlier in this video, but the car was overheating the last time I had it running. And I do believe it's because I removed the fan shroud. I can't remember exactly why I removed the fan shroud, but I did. And that's probably the reason it overheated, but we'll have to confirm on that. I had to kind of like custom fit the fan shroud since this engine is raised up a little bit, since this was a stance car. I don't even think this car is gonna start today, but here is the interior. It is crack-free dash, and I mean, the interior is basically mint. The smell inside this car is just so nostalgic for me. I don't know why, but it just is. Obviously, we have our 5-speed manual transmission here. Man, I really miss this car. I need to get this thing back on the road. For mileage, this car has 61,718 miles. So you could say it's pretty mint. I think that's all the more reason to get this car back on the road. It's just, I can't let it sit here and collect dust like it keeps doing. The goal on this car is, I think, to bring it to OEM Plus. I'm not sure that I want to go back down the stance route again, even though BBS RSs on this car would look so rad. I think OEM Plus would suit it a little bit better. Given the fact that we're gonna be spending a ton of money on body work, I don't know that I wanna drop another 4 or 5 grand on BBS RSs because that's pretty expensive. So we might have to ease our way into the stance setup if that's the route we decide to go. So that's the E30. It kind of sucks seeing it sit here and it's long overdue to bring this thing back on the road. I also think it would probably be a dishonor to mention the other cars in this room. That's my brother's daily Subaru Forester XT. Honestly, can't go wrong with one of those. This is my mom and dad's 4Runner, which is honestly an awesome car. It is pretty mint. They bought it with one owner. And for those of you who don't know, there is a huge market for these things. So it's definitely a pretty cool piece of machinery. Moving down the line, we have my dad's first R32 that he picked up back when they first became legal here in the States. So this car is pretty much completely stock. Now this car does have a badge under the hood that shows it was from the Nissan Amori factory. As you can see, there is the badge there. Now this thing does not have an S-tune or anything, but like I said, it is badged from the Amori factory. I don't know if this was like some old prototype car. Pretty much just has minimal mods done to it. It's a fun car, but it wasn't fast enough for my dad, and he loved it so much that he had to get another one. And as you can see, this one is quite a bit more aggressive, but it's also being worked on. Unfortunately, we do believe this car has some rod knock. So we're basically in the process of getting this thing redone, which is another thing we'll probably have to do this summer. As you can see, it was running a Greddy T88 Turbo. This car is honestly one of the main reasons I started posting a lot of stuff on social media, aside from my brother who does a lot of social media stuff as well, mainly in the drift community. But the turbo flutter that this car produced was insane. I'll try to include a sound clip. I really miss seeing this car, as well as the E30. So we're definitely not short of projects at this household here. So at this point, I'm gonna put together a list of everything we're gonna need for the E30. That way I can start acquiring some parts and we can hopefully start putting in some work on this thing to get it back on the road. Unfortunately, it did not start, which is kind of expected. I assumed the battery was not good. The next video, we're hopefully gonna be actually doing some things to this car. It might take a little while. Like I said, I'm gonna have to order some parts and stuff, but once we do, I am absolutely gonna be putting as much time into this car as I possibly can. But once it's driving, I will try to fit it in my garage. My garage is pretty tight, but I think we can make it work if I move some things around. Let me know what you think we should do to this car. Should we keep it more of a stance car or transition it into sort of a OEM plus car? Because I feel like just a clean E30 is hard to beat, even though stance is kind of cool and stuff. Some BBS RSs on this thing would look sick, but I don't really know what we should do. So let me know what you think. Drop something down in the comments. Consider subscribing, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Cheers.